week's edition of the Yamhill Leadership Roundtable. Betsy Emery is in the audience, but she has declined to join us. And she can raise her hand if she decides. Oh, she does want to be. You declined, Betsy. I will just, well, maybe the computer did. It's great to have you all with us. We're going to have a special guest in a few minutes, but thank you. And I would love to start us off with Mayor King from Amity. You have daffodils with you. So what would you like to share with us about them?
Yes, so Saturday we held a very successful daffodil festival at the community center. Our downtown improvement group put in a ton of work. I was there doing a city-sponsored craft table. We had like 30 kids stop by, but all day people were in and out enjoying the vendors and the flowers. And so that was great. It was one of the first in-person, the first non-masked event. So just to see people mingling and able to talk, it was really great. Yeah. And then we actually have 2 more events coming up in Amity. On the 23rd, we're going to have a shred day for the community. So we've worked with a company that's going to bring like some dumpsters. So anyone that has papers, outdated files, anything they want to get, it'll be professional disposal of. That will be available. And then the next weekend, we're going to be doing the citywide cleanup. Working with Recology so people can bring their bigger clutter and beautify their homes and the city by just getting rid of extras.
Awesome. Well, are there any questions for Mayor King? I would say, how is the bridge project going? Is it still on track?
So I don't know if it's no news is good news, but we haven't heard any updates. So as far as I'm concerned, things are on track and ODOT is just moving right along and we'll hear from them soon.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we have a guest with us, Ted Sturdivant from the Center for Sustainable Infrastructure. And he only has a few minutes here. So I wanted to get him in front of folks, allow him to introduce himself. This is the Yamhill Leadership Roundtable, Ted. We started it in March of 2020 as a twice weekly opportunity to talk with the community about what was going on with coronavirus so as to have a unified and informative message from elected officials. And we still do it, and COVID's still with us. So, but with that, I would love to have you share with folks kind of what you do, your reason for being in the community, and at least one example of work that your organization has done. And thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. I'm honored to be here and appreciate you guys shoehorning me in. And I see Sharon just joined, and we just met in a meeting just a few minutes ago in talking with the city of Yamhill about their water challenges, hi Sharon, we're old friends now. Yeah, so my name's Ted Sturdivant, and I work at a place, it's a little nonprofit up in Olympia, Washington. We work in Oregon and Washington, stronger footprint in Washington, but we're growing our footprint in Oregon. And I'm an Oregon boy from way back. And I come to you all from a friend of mine who some of you probably know, Fritz Graham in Senator Wyden's office. We started in the Oregon legislature when we were both 19 years old and got into all sorts of good trouble together. And what we do, we're a nonprofit that we believe that one really powerful way to change the world in a really good way is through making much better use of the billions and billions and billions of dollars we spend on infrastructure every year, whether statewide or federally, and that there are just so many innovative new ways if you approach things with a spirit of innovation, of sort of integration and systems approaches, as well as a commitment to triple bottom line sustainability, where you care about economic benefits, you care about social community benefits, and you care about ecological and climate benefits, that you can just get a lot more than we tend to do. And innovation is pretty slow in kind of revolutionizing how we spend our infrastructure money, and we're interested in changing that. So that's kind of who we are and what we do. The guy that founded this 7 years ago also founded years ago Climate Solutions, which was also, originally based on sort of those triple bottom line solutions and sort of farmers making money off of clean energy, and Reese did a lot of that work. My background is, since the mid 90s, I came up to Washington and worked for about 25 years, worked in a variety of sort of executive branch state government jobs, including I ran our Department of Ecology under our previous governor. Current governor, I was his legislative and policy director for the first couple of years of his term, and was also chief of staff for our lands commissioner, our Department of Natural Resources. So I've done a lot of work on natural resources, on water, on climate change, and throughout those gigs. And now I'm here working in where we're trying to show that this collaborative, multi-benefit, positive approach works not just in sort of the Portlands and Seattles, but everywhere. And we believe that's a super important part of a fair and equitable world, is that small rural communities have access to the same kind of innovation and opportunities that everyone else does. But the reality is they don't, because of capacity constraints. And so the space we like to work in is that capacity gap. And we do that both at a policy level and also through projects in what we call our innovation lab. And so the approach that we bring is, it's not all we do, but with community projects, our sort of secret weapon is a thing we call value planning, which is a time-limited intervention at the pre-design stage when all things are still possible. And we come in, and it's usually around a 3-month process, and we start with making the problem bigger. So if your problem is we don't have enough water, we say, okay, how can we solve the water supply problem and get as much value for the community as possible? Which then sort of opens you up to, well, if you're going to spend all this money on water, what else is there a housing problem? Is there a, youth leaving, and so we really try to blow up the problem as big as we can. And then go through this and help sort of navigate people through this process of looking at broad alternatives before then coming back into, a plan or a vision for moving forward. We start with grounding ourselves in the values of the community. And well, here's how the process goes. So we start by framing the problem. And then we assemble a technical team of folks. COVID has kind of helped with this because, now no one expects to get on a plane. You can just get on Zoom. So we have this guy that just has wonderful expertise, and I was hoping he could join us here today. Sharon just met Steve on our other call, but he assembles these technical teams of really world-class experts in the field. And he has this amazing Rolodex. So whatever the nature of the sort of problem and aspirations are, we put together really innovative experts that, know what sort of the cutting edge is and what's available. And then they spend about a month researching, looking at possibilities, and coming up with potential ideas. And this thing culminates in an intensive, really fun and energetic day that is the value planning workshop, where we start with, and it's usually like 25 or 30 community members, kind of a broad representation, not just your water staff and et cetera. And they say, here's what we care about. Here are the values of our community. And that then becomes sort of our North Star for as many of those values as can be served from ultimately this project the better, right? So that's sort of our success metric, is those community values. And then, the community is asked, well, what ideas do you have? Do you want to riff? And the technical team says, here's some cool ideas we have to start this conversation. The community then says, well, what if we did this? And we could use that to grow greenhouse, agriculture, and that would help solve the food desert problem for the senior center or whatever. So also, it's this sort of like imagine, dream, and then everyone says, okay, which of these really feel viable? Do we want to pursue? The second half of the day is spent on sort of developing those. So at the end of the day, there's this, well, what if we did this? And then the technical team goes off and spends about a month kind of integrating, researching, proving, testing out, and then comes up with a report at the end of that that says, here's what y'all came up with. So I'll answer your question, Casey, and an example I'll give is, one I really like is the first project I worked on when I started here in 2019, city of Goldendale up the Columbia River in Eastern Washington, small conservative rural town. They've been struggling ever since the aluminum plant shut down in 2007, struggling rural hospital, had to replace their World War II Navy ship backup diesel generator for backup power. And it was going to cost $10 million they didn't have, and they couldn't raise out of the community. So we had taken a bunch of legislators to Denmark to see like really cool things happening in Denmark, right, around energy and stuff. And so the local Republican legislator called us up and said, hey, I've got this problem. Can you guys come in and help? So we started with that challenge. How can the hospital replace its backup diesel generator? And by expanding the problem, we learned that the school was facing another at least $10 million of challenge in energy infrastructure, within the next few years that they haven't even begun to get their heads around, and sort of various other things in the community. So what was born of that process that I just described, and that, altogether took about 3 months, was this super cool project that's called the Goldendale Energy Exchange, where they all got together and said, how about we do this? And it's about an islanded microgrid, which means their energy system would continue to function even in case of an earthquake or whatever. And that there's all this wasted thermal energy that could be shared through a thermal loop that connects to 3 nearby schools, the community pool, and an industrial park, which is mostly unused, and really help provide both efficient cooling and heating there. And then it could also have a STEM education component where the high school students are learning how to manage the system, as well as grow greenhouse agriculture, because they're kind of a food desert there as well. And since we did that project in 2019 and then have been working with them, they got $3 million from the legislature to buy a renewable hydrogen fuel cell. So they're going to be one of the first customers for green hydrogen that's going to start being produced by a nearby PUD. They just got accepted as this pretty prestigious short list of projects from the U.S. Department of Energy, where they're going to provide technical assistance to communities that are doing like innovative energy projects that also have a sort of community equity component. And so they've brought in close to $10 million, for this project, with hopefully a lot more to come. So the project got a lot bigger than 10 million, the original price tag, but it also has all sorts of really attractive components for funding agencies. And then the last part of my story is it then served as the anchor project for a summit last fall called a Regional Economic Diversification Summit, co-hosted by the U.S. Economic Development Administration, where about 25 federal and state funding agencies came to Goldendale virtually. We facilitated that. And it was a constellation of about 15 projects, from housing to the Goldendale Energy Exchange to the city's wastewater treatment plant upgrades, all in this sort of community renewal vision that was really sparked by that value planning exercise and this project. So that's in a nutshell who we are and what we do. And thanks for letting me go on for a while.
Well, thank you, Ted. And I like to think about how it all started by having this project that nobody could afford, but they had to do, or presumably they would lose their hospital, right? I mean, I'm guessing that that's part of it.
Yeah. And I realize I should give context for why I'm joining you guys today. We, for the first time, are trying, well, actually our second time, but this time we kind of know what we're doing because we have some real good guides in making a request from Congress to fund us to do work where we can help communities, particularly small, low capacity communities that are struggling with these kinds of challenges. And so I called my friend Fritz and said, hey, Fritz, do you know of any great projects that you'd really like to see go? And he connected me to Commissioner Kula, and here we are. So we are, and the deadline for that is next week. So we're just sort of scrambling on, are there any projects we want to add to our request list, thus this conversation. But I'll say this too, that we also have a request in for a pretty big grant to the U.S. Economic Development Administration to fund us to do exactly this kind of work in kind of communities of our choosing. So we're hopeful that that funding would come through. And then a third option that funds our work is often we'll, folks can either just hire us, or sometimes we work with them to find grant sources to help fund our work, whether it might be county economic development funding or some other pot like that. So that's what brings me to you today, just to see if, sort of the last minute Hail Mary here. Is there a project here that feels like a fit, which means, it's a fit for our request, and you all would feel comfortable saying, hey, if you guys get money to come help us, we'd be happy to work with you. That basically what we would need is a 1-sentence project description and a letter from the community saying essentially that as that first option. So that's why I'm being shoehorned into your conversation this afternoon.
Oh, deadlines.
They make all sorts of things happen, right?
It's amazing, right? It's really incredible. Well, I want to open the floor to if folks have questions for you. Yes. If folks have questions, feel free to ask Ted, and we'll get contact information in the chat as well. But you've already connected with the city of Yamhill, it sounds like.
Yeah, that was great.
I have a question.
I have a flicker behind me, so if it's loud here, sorry.
Ted, my name's Howie Harkema. I'm wondering what kind of budget that you have to have as a nonprofit to do the work that you're doing right now. That was a great overview of what you've done.
It varies, Howie, by the project a little bit, but as I told Sharon, usually doing a value planning exercise, funding this whole thing is right around 100 grand, or sometimes it's a little more than that, but that's a ballpark.
Thank you.
Yeah, and most of that goes to hiring that technical team I talked about. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. I'm going to make sure that we keep on track by having Betsy Emery from U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley's office give us an update. What's new in the Senate besides last week we actually had Senate confirmation hearings. So go for it, Betsy. And thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here again. Mostly I have been working with, me and Fritz have been doing a lot of work around the congressionally directed spending process and that outreach. I've talked to a number of the folks on this call about various projects and where they might be able to fit in the process. So it's been really just I mean, while it's definitely been a heavy lift for Fritz and I, it's been really inspiring to just like be reminded of all the incredible things that people are doing in these communities. And just, yeah, there are a lot of strong networks and strong projects, and it's in days that can be difficult, those are the little wins and the nice moments, I think, that keep us all going. So that's been a big piece of my work. As a reminder for those of you that might still be working on your applications, like Ted mentioned, they are due at 6 p.m. on Friday. The portal will lock at that time. So make sure that you're doing what you can this week. If you have additional questions, you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to continue supporting you all in the process of submitting those requests. But that, and then I did want to give a little readout from the town hall that we hosted for Yamhill County last week. Many of you were there, and it was great to see you. We were able to talk about a lot of things that I'm sure many of you are very, very familiar with. We spoke about, during the meet and greet, a number of different topics came up, including the Newburgh bypass, and the senator and I discussed that in depth during the prep, just because he's always very curious about where things are. So I think he appreciated the update and the news that they received $32 million and the efforts that are going on around local match. So he was excited to see the movement there. We talked a lot about housing and childcare and issues around that. Of course, CDS came up, unsurprisingly, from a number of folks who were able to join us. And we also talked a lot about the new CTEC Center with Sheridan. So Brent, I think, got to have some good conversation with the senator, and we've thus followed up. And so he is always interested in workforce development and ways to expand career paths. So he was really intrigued by that. And sounds like I'm going to have to get my feet on the ground out there and see what you all are doing. So, and then in the actual town hall, we spoke about a couple of different things. Someone brought up some of the federal bills related to Social Security for federal workers. We talked at length with Dan Dugan, the superintendent with the Perrydale School District, talking about their food program. And during COVID, essentially, the federal government kind of changed the school lunch program so that anyone could be eligible for free or reduced lunch, instead of kind of having, you know, the special process for those students. I was that student, so I definitely remember having the different colored raffle tickets than the other lunch ticket, like the lunch students. So they're definitely, yeah, literally, that was during Arkansas. I lived in Arkansas at that time. So maybe not the most progressive system. But anyway, so that we had a lot of conversation about kind of what might happen now that COVID is kind of ending, or, you know, we're moving into this next phase of whatever our lives look like. So he's asked me to do a little bit of digging to see kind of where that is, who is really interested. And then, yeah, talked about COVID relief package, where that funding is actually going and how it's may or may not be supporting immunocompromised folks, and whether or not there is equitable access to early onset, early diagnosis therapeutics. It was sad that we started on a really high note by recognizing the Perrydale Food for All program, and just they had the most excellent and wonderful flag presentation ceremony of all time. I think everyone that worked for Senator Merkley was just blown away by those incredible students and the work that they do. And then it ended on a very sad note, hearing about a McMinnville community member that died very, very rapidly from diagnosis due to lack of access to therapeutics. So it's definitely a roller coaster of a town hall, but those are kind of the spark notes, I guess. And with that, I'm happy to field any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you, Betsy.
So Betsy, I'm sending you an invitation right now to get you out. So that you'll see that by the afternoon.
And Abisha Stone.
Yep.
Abisha. She had also messaged me on the side during the town hall that she wanted to be a part of that tour too and take me out. So we should loop her as well.
And
Sharon has turned on her video too, so Sharon might have something for you. But sorry, Mayor King.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Betsy, as you do some digging into the federal food program and the free and reduced lunches, if you want to loop me in, I'm interested to hear like the next direction, because I know we have like the summer food programs that will come through the communities and give food, you know, daily, and that was expanded too. And I just know that it's a huge resource to a lot of families here, and not having the barrier of paperwork is huge. So if that could transform into a funded program to just keep kids fed, I would be all about that. So I'm happy to get any info and advocate if needed.
Great. I'll add you. I'll be sure to share whatever info I track down with you. And that's a good point too, is to think about, I know there was a lot of expanded federal support for food purchasing, food banks, things like that, like not so much just school oriented food programs, but other types of community food programs. So I'll be sure to try to get a feel on what those benefits, you know, what negotiations may or may not be underway in terms of expanding those benefits that were established.
Yeah, it turns out that when you start doing it, you realize how wonderful it is. It's like, wait, how can we not do this?
Right.
I will note that the former mayor of Amity, Mayor Cape, was also really good about keeping on this particular issue, especially since during early pandemic, he was delivering with the school bus meals to students in the St. Louis School District. Yeah, are there other questions? Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I always come back to that basic hierarchy of needs. And so like food and shelter, let's focus on that, you know, and we can move up from there. But that's just where my mind goes.
I always add water. Are there other questions or comments for Betsy Emery?
I had one, and I know that our city administrator pro tem is also on the line. So if she wants to interject, we're working on submissions for the congressional bill grant. And a couple of questions we had were, could we submit more than one application in either different areas or even in the same area? If we had several water projects or several wastewater projects, could we submit several applications?
So there is some strategy here. So yes, the short answer is yes, that you can submit multiple projects, but there is some strategy to that thinking. If you're going to submit multiple water or wastewater projects into Interior, then those projects are all going to compete against each other, because it's going to be the same people reviewing those projects against all the other projects that were submitted into that academy, that subcommittee. I am losing my mind. But there are other places where you can fund water and wastewater work aside from the Interior Committee, where you might be able to spread some of that out. The other one that you could feasibly argue, depending on the project, you know, if it's a project that's meant to like support economic development opportunities within the city of Yamhill, because you need to upsize your water or wastewater, for example, you can put that into the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Committee under the Economic Development Initiative. So surprisingly, there is an opportunity, kind of a backdoor, because really that account is held to the requirements of Cdbg. Many of us are familiar with the Community Development Block Grant that Business Oregon administers. So that's really what the side rails are for the EDI grant. But let me do a quick scan to make sure there aren't any other accounts that you can put water funds into.
Okay, and you mentioned the CDBG grant, the community development. Would your entity have to qualify for the
Match.
limits that they, yeah, the limits they put on to be able to receive a CDBG grant?
Oh, in terms of only having the $550,000, like,
Economic levels?
oh, yeah. In terms
Yeah.
of like the eligibility requirements, like
Yes,
you're
thank you.
supporting low and moderate income. You're making an argument that this is like providing economic development by being able to support businesses, people coming into the community. It's all of those kinds of, the strings that live with CDBG would be the strings that live with this funding as well, if you solicited it through EDI. And the same goes with if you solicit through the Department of Interior and the EPA accounts. Those are going to have or the EPA or the, whatever the other one is, those are going to be held to the same strings as the Clean Water State Revolving Fund and the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, because it's essentially, instead of getting it through the pass-through of the state, you're just cutting that line and getting it through Congress,
Okay,
if that makes sense.
yes, that makes sense. So if the city of Yamhill doesn't meet the economic limits, they wouldn't be able to apply for that economic development, right? Because I know
One thing that might affect that would be that, so CDBG is a national program that gets administered through states. And so states tag on additional requirements to the CDBG money. And so there is like, the strings are a bit looser if you're thinking about the national CDBG pot.
okay.
I don't know if those ones specifically are looser. But I would imagine, I mean, you have to be making an argument that you're addressing low and moderate income people. So I guess however you clarify that.
Okay.
But yeah, most of the water, wastewater money does live within the Department of Interior. So if that's money that, if those are like the primary projects that you need support in, I would suggest limiting yourself to like one big one, or because the other thing is like within that account, the median award that we brought home was around like $1.5 million. So unfortunately, the world we live in, that's not really a lot to like batch projects together. But you can, you know, whatever the priority one that you need, that $1 million would really move the project forward, then that's the one I would suggest you submit to Interior.
Okay, and in that competitive group, are they grouping water and wastewater together? Or could we potentially do a priority one for water and a priority one for wastewater?
Let me look at the account list really quickly.
These are some good questions, Sharon.
Thank
and I will
you.
say that, Betsy, you've learned so much.
Okay, thank you for recognizing that, Commissioner Kula, because I swear CDS has been, if there is any way to onboard to the federal government, it is this process. I have learned 800,000 different federal accounts in the last 2 weeks. Okay, under Interior. So yeah, I mean, conceivably, so that's the other way you might get around it, right? Is like, yes, you're being considered by the same committee, the same subcommittee, Interior, but because it is 2 separate accounts, I'm not sure how that might weigh, right? Like, it is technically the same people, but you're asking for funding over separate programs. Last year, I wouldn't say that there's only one instance of the whole like list of 148 projects that we brought home, where we funded the same entity twice. So it's very rare.
Okay. The other question I had is, we were recently funded in the last round. Will our application compete very well if we apply again?
We don't know that.
I know with some grant opportunities, it's one of their criteria. If you were funded, you know, within the last year or something, you lose points. So we weren't sure how they were scoring this or how they were processed.
Unfortunately, that's just like not an answer that I have. Like,
Okay.
This is only our 2nd year doing congressionally directed spending again. So I think I'm not sure that the committees have made that decision yet. So as soon as I know, I'll tell you, but I don't think that I'll know that before April 1st.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Of course.
And then Sharon, did your city manager pro tem want to ask anything, or did you get it covered?
She's on the line, so
Yeah, it looks like there's a phone number, so.
Yeah, the phone number, so I'm assuming
Thank you for calling the city of
perk
Yamaha.
up if she
you have an
wanted to
emergency,
say
please
something
hang up and
or
dial
send me an
911.
email, and I'm not
Yamhill
seeing
City Hall will be
anything,
open
so.
Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m.
Okay,
to
that
5
sounds
p.m.
good.
Yeah,
If you've
thank
reached
you
this
so
message
much.
during normal business hours, please leave them.
Betsy, I did, well, are there other questions for Betsy?
I have one. Hi, Betsy.
Hi.
I wondered if there were any grant funds available for homelessness issues in Yamhill County right now, that there's a pool or pot of money that we could apply for to create a sheltering system.
Yeah, that's like what a majority of what we brought home last year within the transportation, housing, and urban development account was for housing. So we purchased we supported a lot of entities in purchasing property to build shelters on, rehab property to build or to create shelter space, to create affordable housing, things like that. The one thing that I will flag is that it is mostly like construction oriented. It's not the planning process. So you kind of have to have your design plans in place so that you're really ready to like expend that funding within 12 to 18 months of award. But if there are housing projects in Yamhill County or shelter projects in Yamhill County that you think are ready at that point, I would love to connect and talk you through the process. We are getting down to the wire because the application deadline is at 6 p.m. on Friday, but if there's something in mind, we can chat about it.
Can you put your email in the chat so I can get a hold of you?
Of course.
Thank
I'll do that right now.
And Betsy, along those lines, do you know if the Housing Authority applied for a CDS?
I haven't seen them on the last readout that I got, which was late last week. So I don't know if Yamhill, I've shared it with Vicky, but I don't know what their plans are for that.
Yeah. Okay. That's at least she knows then, because yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I saw all Carlton's. You guys are like on it. I saw all 6 of your guys'. I was like, perfect. You guys are ready to go.
Oh gosh. Woo! Very nice job, Carlton. Well, Betsy, I just wanted to flag for you that the county is actually going to be applying, submitting an application for the Federal Lands Access Program, so the FLAP funds, which is obviously separate from CDS.
Yeah.
But that program is, I think the applications are due the 6th. So
Okay. If you want to request a letter of support from the senator, let me know ASAP. I'll funnel the request out. That's something that any of you all can do. If you're putting in if you're putting in a grant request for federal funding, you can always request a letter of support from the senator. There's no guarantee that he'll give it, but it's always an option on the table, another way that we try to support our communities. So if you want to send me what you have for the grant, Casey, I'd be happy to funnel that request out.
that sounds great.
We might not get it to you by the 6th, but we can always backdoor it over to the agency.
Totally.
through
And
our
we're
office.
working, the Bureau of Land Management is the kind of sponsoring and supporting entity at the federal level to replace a bridge out in Western Yamhill County, out in the
Oh,
forest.
perfect.
So yeah, I will make connections for you.
So can I just jump in for a second to, Betsy, you kind of got a little bit of praise there, but you deserve a whole lot more than that because, obviously, you said learning from this is like drinking from a fire hose, but holy cow. Yeah, both you and Fritz and anyone who's on the staff side of this is doing a lot of amazing stuff. I also want to, it's worth knowing for people here that, you know, the process we're talking about right now with Betsy and Senator Merkley's office and Senator Wyden's office is the April 1st deadline. There also is the House side of this, which is, you know, those applications, you know, you'd want to reach out to Congresswoman Bonamici's office, but those are not an April 1st deadline. There is a little, I think those are like April 15th or maybe the end of April. So
April 15th.
yeah.
Yeah.
Very good point. All right. Well, Betsy, thank you for joining us, giving that recap, and for learning so much and being so on top of it.
Trying. Happy to help. It's my job. So reach out anytime. If I don't know the answer, I'll get someone to find it.
That sounds great. Well, with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mayor Watkins in the city of Carlton to share with us what's new in the city and how folks here can connect and help with their work. Mayor.
It's kind of, listening to everybody is kind of overwhelming how much is going on right now. It's just an amazing time of year. And as you mentioned, we've been scrambling and busy little bees getting our congressionally directed spending requests in. So I haven't even talked to Shannon this week, so I'm assuming that we're moving right along on that. I know. She's been a fireball. She's been great. Other than that, I'm trying to think what's going on in Carlton. We're in a little bit of a not really retrenching, but just in a little bit of a lull right now. We've got a lot of stuff activated, but we're just waiting for things to get started. We're working on our comprehensive plan. We have a survey up online for the citizens to be able to go in and put comments in and fill out the survey on what they would like to see happen with our comprehensive plan and the changes they would like to see made. We're working on a number of community meetings, small group meetings around the community to also get some feedback that way. Anything that we can think of to get our citizens involved with and active in that program is basically what we're doing, so that when we get ready to take it back to the consultants and the folks that will be actually working on in our planning commission, who will be working on the comprehensive plan and our code updates, that we've got hopefully a lot of really good input from everybody to do that with. So that's going on. We're, continuing with ODOT on the Highway 47 realignment and just continuing conversations with them and working with that. And they're starting to do some surveying to do some replacements on the handicapped ramps. The ramps, the ones that wouldn't be affected. Oh gosh, it's just my connection is unstable again. I thought maybe I'm house sitting, so I thought maybe this was a better situation, but it doesn't look like it. So I better quit while I'm ahead. I'm not gonna
Well, Mayor, I could hear you just fine.
Anymore. So we'll stop there.
Okay, well, I could hear you just fine, Mayor.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I just was, okay. Well, I worry about everybody else just sitting there and seeing mouth moving and nothing's happening. So
it is interesting that we can hear you.
We're losing one of our long-term you'll probably regret it by the time I get done too. I'm sorry. We're losing one of our long-term city staff members this week. It's Isn't this silly? But he started work for the city and has been my parks guy on the same year that I moved to the city. So seeing him go is just like, it's really obviously very distressing for me. But I'm sure I'll get over it. And Lynn is going to be very happy just being retired. But he's been a great parks guy. He's taken care of all of our parks and just done a wonderful job. And we're really going to miss him. So other than that, that's enough.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate your connection to staff. Yeah.
We have some really good people. We're just very fortunate.
That's wonderful. Well, before I move on to both Brent and to Howie for updates, I want to make sure that the city of Yamhill also can have an opportunity to share.
Was there anything in specific you wanted to know about the city of Yamhill?
No, generally people give an update on what's happening of note in their communities. So if you would like to, you're welcome to.
I'm totally unprepared for this. Let's see what's happening besides.
Well, I would say that the old gas station has not come down yet, at least the last time I drove through Yamhill.
The one
Across from you.
Yeah, that's still there. Yeah, I cannot think of anything. I'm probably not the best person though.
All right, well, thank you.
Anything to report for Yamhill, Kim?
In regards to,
Any kind of community events or anything going on?
not so far, Easter is coming up next month.
We have an Easter egg hunt coming up next month, Kim's reporting.
Nice. All right, well, thank you, Sharon.
Sorry.
Well, no, it's okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Well, then I'm going to pass it off to Brent if there's anything new from Sheridan School District and CTEC.
You know, just living inside of the same world where Betsy talked about, and you know, the whole congressionally directed spending. You know, it's pulling together the different waves of support and kind of the different orbits of people and getting everyone together and directed the same way, which probably sounds like regular business to most of the people on this call. You know, exciting stuff. Great to be seeing the support we have and just kind of keeping things moving forward.
Awesome. Sounds great. And then Howie, what would you like to share with people today? And it's good to see you.
Great to see all of you. Thank you. Encompass Yamhill Valley is getting ready to hire a peer-to-peer support specialist for Newburgh and one for McMinnville. We continue to do the Sunday sandwiches at the McMinnville Public Library and in the undercover area from 1 to 3 every Sunday, because that was a day that there was no feedings going on for our community. Also, we have over the winter now seen over 1,500 guests at our shelters as we coordinate all of the day and warming and cooling shelters across Yamhill County, for a total of 1,826 people sheltered from the beginning of summer of last year through current. So we're very on the ground, boots on the ground, and working hard. We're getting ready to hear from Director Lindsay Manfred about the 110 grant. We're expecting that they will fund us to do that work. And there's many, many other things that are going on, as we all know. I've done an ask of both Amity and of Carleton to get more involved in the sheltering programs, whether it be day centers or such. And at my mayor's meeting, I'm sure they'll update me where that is at with their ask to their councils and other people. So a lot is going on, and a lot of wonderful things are also going on as far as apprising what we can do as communities in relationship to those that are marginalized, underserved, and are houseless. There is a lot of generational poverty in Yamhill County that we've come to see. So the need is great, and the action needs to be as quick as possible. That's my report for today.
Well, thank you, Howie. Howie, the peer support specialists who are in McMinnville and in Newburgh, how does somebody connect with them? How, if we knew somebody who needed help, how would we connect them?
Yeah, we have a website, Encompass Yamhill Valley. We also have a Facebook page where they can inquire over the Facebook page if they need assistance. We will be hooking up a phone line to contact both peer support specialists, both in Newburgh and in McMinnville. Our initial jump into this is in Newburgh. They will be going to 2nd Street Community Church and also the Newburgh Emergency Shelter as a beginning point to inquire with the clientele that are already there, and then to present all of this information of what we can assist in, whether it be clothing or resources or whatever is necessary. So to answer your question, it's multiple things: website, Facebook, and a phone number. Okay. And that's how we will push that forward.
Okay, great. And then peer support specialists will come to them, find them, connect with them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Howie.
Thank you, Casey.
All right. Are there any other thoughts for the good of the community? I will say that on the county side of things right now, we have the nonprofit support grant awards that we'll be determining this week. So I can report back to you on who is getting those awards. But since we haven't determined them yet, they're just a draft on a digital document. But that will be, it's about 10% of the funding, the American Rescue Plan funding that we've received that will go out to nonprofits to support their work. And ideally, it'll be for kind of the institutional infrastructure to help organizations keep moving forward. But stay tuned for that. And then hopefully I will see some of you Friday morning at 9 a.m. at the City of Yamhill, where we'll start our road safety tours. And you'll get more details, those of you who are signed up or ready to go, you'll get more details before we get started.
Commissioner, I have a random question for you. So the Board of Commissioners went over the base needs analysis and the presentation of all those options. But what I didn't catch is, what is a realistic timeline for when we might see like actual changes, construction, and movement? Is this like a 5-year plan or?
Right, so it all depends upon which of the presentation had really 3 different possibilities, and all of those were timelines that each of the possibilities was a separate timeline. Realistically, we're going to need to find the funding for the first phase of the first one, but that's within 2 to 3 years is the moving forward with that.
Thank you. There was like so much information that I couldn't go back and just find that little piece.
Yeah, if we choose to move forward, it's a plan, but the Board of Commissioners has to approve then taking the next steps with it. Like my recommendation is that we actually appoint a task force of community members, people who know how to do development, funding, all of that, and providing advice and counsel from the different missions of the county, so that we have a broad range of views and a broad range of support before seeking funding and really making the plans.
It just seems like such a huge undertaking for the county, huge, and it will affect all of us. So
And it's
it's
going to
really,
move departments around and buildings will shift, and
it's kind of intimidating. Like, what is the first step? But I'm glad to see the three of you like looking at the first steps. It's exciting, but
yes,
there's a
it
ways
is.
to go.
It is very exciting. It is very exciting. This really started with Commissioner Olson saying, there's a lot of buildings that really that are not up to current standards. They don't have sprinklers, or they don't have ADA ramps. They don't have proper bathrooms. There's not egress from some of these older buildings. What can we do to have better, safer, healthier buildings? And then as the process of that, we were like, well, we actually need to look at all of them as part of that. But we're at a moment that's very, there are so many buildings, for example, that Health and Human Services are in, that you lose a lot of efficiency and institutional knowledge and communications when you're going between buildings. And when people come to an office and we say, well, that's the wrong office, you need to go over there, that they might have to go 4 blocks into a building that maybe isn't ADA accessible. So there's so many things that we need to update. And stay tuned. And in the meantime, we need to clean up, since Sharon's here, we need to clean up the property that's right across from Yamhill City Hall. All right, well, I will see some of you on Friday. Thank you all for your dedication to the community, and stay safe out there.